You want 30 little known facts about the American Graffiti Movie? I've got it. Let's get started. Number 1. Toad, in the opening scene of American Graffiti, loses control of his scooter and crashes into a trash can at Mel's Diner. That wasn't in the script. Toad really did have troubles putting on the brakes, and director George Lucas decided to keep filming while he had troubles and kept it in the film. I can't believe the other actors didn't crack up laughing when that happened. Number 2. The water balloon thrown at Carol when she was riding around in Milner's 32 coupe was supposed to hit the window frame, but instead it missed and splattered directly on Carol's face, and the scene was real just the way it happened. Number 3. Harrison Ford was offered $485 a week for his role as street racer Bob Falfa, but turned it down because he could make more at his real job as a Hollywood carpenter. He changed his mind when the offer was raised to $500 a week. Number 4. Money was tight on the set of American Graffiti. There was little money to lease or rent the fleet of 1950s vehicles needed for the filming. Owners of the cars who offered up their vehicles were paid $20 to $25 and given free food on the movie set. Number 5. Producers wanted Harrison Ford to have a flat top haircut for his brief role, but he refused. He compromised and ended up wearing a white cowboy hat instead. He said, "I was afraid if something else came up, some other acting job, I might not be able to get it because of the crew cut." Number 6. In a movie about high school students, only 2 of the actors, Ron Howard and Charles Martin Smith, both 18 years old, were really teens. The other main cast members were older, most in their 20s, with the exception of 12-year-old Mackenzie Phillips and Harrison Ford, who turned 30 during filming. Number 7. During editing and matching up a film with dialogue, someone asked George Lucas for Reel 2, Dialogue 2. A couple of years later, when Lucas was making a Star Wars film, he gave one of the droids the classic name of R2-D2. Number 8. Studio executives were skeptical of the film's title. They didn't know what American Graffiti meant. They suggested many alternates, such as Rock Around the Block, The Drag Years, Summer Blood, and Another Slow Night in Modesto, none of which worked for director George Lucas. Number 9. After the movie was finished, Universal Studios wasn't terribly impressed. They wanted to re-edit it and possibly turn it into a TV movie, but they decided to leave it alone after producer Francis Ford Coppola, who had just directed the Godfather movie, which was already on its way to being a smash hit, gave them the ultimatum. He was prepared to purchase the film himself to release it theatrically if the studio tried to take it away and squash the project. Number 10. A movie poster for American Graffiti depicted all the characters in an exaggerated cartoon montage. It was drawn by Mort Drucker, an illustrator for Mad Magazine. The artwork is now an exhibit in the Library of Congress. Number 11. The filmmakers were so impressed with Richard Dreyfuss and his abilities, they gave him a choice between playing 2 characters: the high school leading man Steve, who ultimately gets his girl, or the loner Kurt, who spends the night searching for a mysterious blonde. He chose Kurt. Number 12. The film was shot almost entirely at night, between 9 p.m. and sunrise, with many off-camera cast members and crews huddled in blankets to ward off the California chill or sleeping in unused cars. It was cold most nights, Ron Howard recalls, and we were wearing t-shirts. Number 13. When DJ Wolfman Jack prank calls a pizza worker, the voice of the employee, unseen on the other end of the phone, is actually George Lucas. Number 14. American Graffiti was one of the first major movies to use actual pop hits instead of original scored music for a soundtrack, a technique later used by Martin Scorsese in Goodfellas and Quentin Tarantino in most of his films. Number 15. John Milner's role as a street racing character was such a hit with fans, a similar character was added to a later retro nostalgic TV show, Fonzie from the Happy Days. Number 16. Johnny Weissmuller Jr., whose dad famously portrayed Tarzan in a dozen films during the 1930s and 40s, has a small role as one of the 2 street tough guys, credited as Badass Number 1, who briefly menaced Terry the Toad. Number 17. Ron Howard went on to become an entertainment legend, an Oscar-winning director, and a TV and film producer. But did you know he also came up with the concept for the TV hit show called Arrested Development? He produced the show, narrated it, and made several appearances during the comedy series from 2003 to 2006 as a fictionalized version of himself. Number 18. The mysterious elusive blonde, Suzanne Summers, who became Kurt's night-long obsession from her Ford Thunderbird, was originally intended to be a figment of Kurt's imagination. A sequence explaining the fantasy element was never filmed, due to the movie's tight budget. Number 19. The plaid shirt worn by Richard Dreyfuss's character was deemed by cinematographer Haskell Wexler to be perfect for setting and adjusting the cameras before each take. So Dreyfuss became a human test pattern, standing in front of the lens for almost every scene. I hated that shirt, Dreyfuss recalls. Number 20. Director George Lucas, who worked for a while as a foreign car mechanic, initially envisioned the movie as a way to explain America's car culture, one in which he had enthusiastically participated in. Like most kids who grew up in San Fernando Valley, I did a lot of cruising. I really felt compelled to document this unique American mating ritual using automobiles. Number 21. Hundreds of young actors auditioned, and most didn't get a part. One of them, Mark Hamill, however, was a lead role in director Lucas's next movie, Star Wars, in the role of Luke Skywalker. Number 22. One Easter egg in the American Graffiti Movie is the license plate THX-138 on John Milner's 32 Coupe. It is a shout out to Lucas's 1971 debut film THX-1138. Number 23. As a prank, his fellow cast members threw Richard Dreyfuss into the pool at their Holiday Inn, where he hit his face on the bottom of the pool, leaving him with a bright shiner and had to be concealed the next day with makeup provided by co-star Cindy Williams. Number 24. The DC-7 airplane Kurt boarded at the end of the film was once leased to the rock group Grand Funk Railroad. Made in 1956 and used for a variety of services over the 3 decades, it crashed on its final flight in 1986, killing 3 crew members. Number 25. Ron Howard's role in American Graffiti led to his TV stardom in Happy Days, which debuted on ABC 2 years later. The fact that Ron Howard's graffiti character seemed a lot like Richie Cunningham, who he'd later play in Happy Days, is likely because the movie producers saw him in the Happy Days pilot, which was already put on hold but waiting for a TV greenlight. After the success of American Graffiti, Happy Days was rushed into production as a full-fledged series. Number 26. Choreography for the big gymnasium dance scene was coordinated by Tony Basil, who would go on in the 1980s to score a top 40 pop hit with Mickey. Number 27. 2 decades after the film was released, a group of teenage high school girls in Petaluma, California, spearheaded a movement to get a movie theater in the town where the movie was primarily filmed. The turning point for the crusade came when Lucas Production Company provided a copy of American Graffiti for them to screen at an awareness rally, ultimately leading to the construction of a $9 million multiplex. Number 28. The success of American Graffiti opened doors to Hollywood's future with other movies that also craved America's appetite for nostalgia and coming-of-age tales like Animal House, Stand By Me, Grease, Dazed and Confused, and Almost Famous. Number 29. Mel's Drive-In, an actual restaurant in San Francisco, was used as a hotspot for some of the movie's activities. It was later demolished but became a local franchise after the film became a hit, leading to the opening of several Mel's in Southern California. And finally, number 30. The 1979 sequel, More American Graffiti, featured all the main cast from the original movie except Richard Dreyfuss. Ron Howard reprised his role as Steve, making his final appearance as a credited character in a theatrical film before moving fully into directing. Even though several cast members, Cindy Williams, Harrison Ford, and Ron Howard, had gone on to become certifiably bigger stars in 1979. Due to their subsequent appearances in Laverne and Shirley, Happy Days, and Star Wars, the sequel box office success paled in comparison, and movie critics mostly gave it a thumbs down. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this fact-finding mission of American Graffiti, check out some of my other videos that you may enjoy as well.